Well, I think it's 10 o'clock, so I'd like to get started. I'd like to welcome everyone that's here today. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Kim Myers. I'm the president of the Lorain County Fair Board. I have a variety of duties here on the Fair Board. I'm the chairman of Midway and Concessions, which is the food, ride, the games, the indoor and outdoor exhibits, of a variety of things with regard to that. I'm also chairman of the executive committee of the beer committee. We're in an area now where our beer tent's set up and we actually sell beer. Also the media relations committee. So I welcome you all out here this morning. My primary purpose of wanting to meet with you folks today is clear up a few things that have been said that we have not had an opportunity to respond to, and hopefully you'll have a better understanding of the direction the Fair Board is taking and why we're going that way. So I'm going to start and I'm going to talk about a few things. If at any time you have any questions, please stop me. I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. I've got probably about 10 or 15 minutes of things here I'd like to say, but please stop me at any time. I'll be glad to answer your question. One of the topics that has recently come up has been a letter that was put out by Mayor Hans Schneider, the mayor of the village of Wellington. That letter actually came out last week, which was July 17th in the morning. That was a Facebook letter that he put out that I first became aware of when a local newspaper reporter called me at lunchtime and said, "Hey, Kim, are you aware that the mayor wants to cancel the fair? What are your comments?" And I was not aware. And I had a few people call me during the day that said there was a letter put out on Facebook, but never actually sent to the board, and we had no forewarning that that was going to happen. So I saw the letter when I got home from work and made a copy of it, and several of the local newspapers, I talked with them about what my comments and thoughts were about that letter. The letter was never sent to the board, and I don't think that he intended for the board to have a copy of it the day he put it out. It wasn't until Monday, 3 days later, July 20th, that he actually had someone hand deliver a typed up letter to the Fair Board, and I believe that was probably because of all of the flack he was getting about not notifying the Fair Board of what was going on and what his intentions were. We felt a little blindsided by that. Well, I shouldn't say a little, definitely blindsided by it, because we had had a board meeting the 14th, 3 days prior to him putting this out, which he never came to. He never asked us to have a meeting or discuss his concerns on what was going on. Just by way of background, you should know that this fair is split in two, not really in two, but about 80% of it is in Wellington Township. Only 20% of it is actually in the village, which the mayor, the part-time mayor, by the way, presides over. So as far as the village's piece to all this, they only have a very small portion of the fairgrounds that is actually part of it. The village is small, it's about 4,500 people, so you should be aware of that. But anyhow, with regard to the letter, I'd like to address several points that were made in it. When I finally did get a copy of it Monday, 3 days later, and the copy was dropped off for the board here at the office, I looked through it, and there are several things that I felt should be addressed. First and foremost, there was a complaint about as far as bringing the coronavirus illness into the community, that there was concerns that we would do that by having the fair here. And I would just suggest that that's really naive and short thinking to think that you're going to bring it in just by having the fair here. And the reason that's naive is because for 3 or 4 months, our local newspapers and a lot of the media have been reporting that we've had many cases in Wellington of coronavirus that have nothing to do with fairs or people coming in and out. Unfortunately, the illness or the disease is everywhere, and we're all trying to protect against it. But to suggest that the fair is going to bring that in when it's already here is really misleading, I would suggest to you. With regard to people in the community, this is a small community. The majority of the people do not work here. They work the townships and the community itself. They work Cleveland, Akron, Medina, Lorain, Elyria, Avon Lake. I work in Elyria. People work all over from this community, and they're coming into contact with all kinds of people that will be coming to our fair. So what will happen the last week of August here is nothing new or novel. It's happening already, and we have thousands of people that travel through our small village every day with business, to our restaurants, to our stores. So to suggest that something new is coming in is just not accurate. There were also some comments made about the nationwide statistics of what's going on with the coronavirus disease. Probably all of you are aware from today's or yesterday's news report that Lorain County now has gone down a level, from a level 3 to a level 2. We're now in the orange, we're out of the red, and that's a good thing, obviously. And it probably will continue to fluctuate back and forth between 1, 2, and 3 indefinitely, because it only takes a few numbers to make the numbers tip one way or the other, and you get into these different colors. So, but it's good that it's into orange, and it shows that we've been making good progress, and the things we're doing in Lorain County are being done well. I've had conversations with Dave Koval. Dave is the Health Commissioner for Lorain County. Just spoke with him yesterday, speak with him several times every week in planning and preparation for the fair. There's just been a tremendous amount of work being done in that regard. So just want you to know that these numbers and things that are being talked about are clearly sensitive to our county in Northeast Ohio and not nationwide. It's unfair for Mayor Schneider to try to connect what's going on nationally to Lorain County, because you're comparing apples and potatoes. They're not the same thing to compare. I'd also like to point out the fact that with regard to what we've done here at the fair, you'll notice in Mayor Schneider's article, and I'm going to touch on what the commissioners recently came out with yesterday for Lorain County, not in support of the fair. You'll note in all of those comments that they make and the things that they do, there is never a discussion about what the State of Ohio Department of Health has recommended. There's never a discussion about what Lorain County Health Commissioner Dave Koval is recommending. There'll be a little blurb in the newspapers about what they're saying, but they'll never talk about it. You don't see it in their articles, you don't see them talking about it. They're talking about politics. We think it's become a political football with them. Mayor Schneider went to the commissioners and asked them to cancel the fair, and they wouldn't. But they would come out. They did come out with their opinion yesterday, and we can touch on that in a moment. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to talk about looking at the science and you want to talk about what's going on, they're ducking it, and it's purely political is the reason why. If you talk to Dave Koval and you ask him, and I have a folder full of newspaper articles where he's saying our fair can go forward, we can go forward safely, and there are protocol and protective things in place that if we follow, we can put a safe fair on here in Lorain County. So that's important to point out also. With regard to what the state of Ohio and Governor DeWine and the local health department have put out, we feel that that's the best information to rely on. We have planned on that here at the fair. Our directors have met with the health department. Dave Koval's been out here on numerous occasions with the fair, meeting on these different departments. We've got all kinds of things we put into place, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do to make the fair safe when I wrap up here today. But the other thing I wanted to touch on is it worth it? There's been a lot of discussion. Is the fair worth it? It's not worth it. People are saying it's not worth it. Don't do it. We think it is worth it. And I've stated before, we have 1,500 people in our 4-H program here in Lorain County. We have one of the biggest 4-H programs in the state of Ohio, one of the most successful, which was really something to be proud of. We're very proud of that here. Those kids have worked all year for this fair. They have worked on animal projects, they've worked on still life projects, they've worked on club activities. We have a huge grouping of clubs, 4-H clubs and FFA in Lorain County. And we told them back on June 11th we were going forward, and you should have seen the excitement. I was out here working last Saturday. The numbers that you see for all the vendors here, we're painting those right now. I saw about 30 4-H kids over in their barns. The barns are all along the west side here, getting ready. They're out there working, they're cleaning, they're painting, they're setting up. So is it worth it? We think for the 4-H kids and for their families, absolutely. And the other consideration we've had that we feel is important is, as you all know, since the middle of March of 2020, it's just been horrible for the kids, from K through 12. You know, they had the rug pulled out from underneath them, they had some virtual learning, all of their activities got pulled out from underneath them. Their sports events, you know, things like for your seniors, your proms, all the different kinds of things you look forward to doing, they didn't have any of it. We think, because we think they're going to be going back to school, that we can do this safely, and this will be a good thing for them to give them something after all they've been through the last 4 or 5 months and all the things they couldn't do. We think we can give them this, and we can do this safely, and they'll really enjoy it, and this would be a nice transition for them back into the school environment. Because let's face it, everybody, at some time we got to open up the schools, but sometimes we have to try to go back. Depending on what the school districts decide, they're all going to maybe do different things, but you know, the kids can't sit home and do virtual learning and not have any contact with other kids and all that. It's going to make things worse rather than better. So, you know, we feel it's important for the kids. also our community. The community being all of Lorain County and the surrounding counties. We have a big fair family here, and they've been devastated too with being out of work, with not being able to do any extracurricular activities, can't vacation, can't travel, being shut in, all of those things. On a beautiful day like today, this is the best place you can be. Out in the sun, getting fresh air, and getting vitamin D. Ask any doctor, ask any health commissioner, they'll say, yeah, that's what you want. Fresh air, sun, and being outside. It's great for people. Well, we can do that by having them here. And then we have, let's talk about the vendors. I saw on one of the TV stations this morning, there was some discussion about how hard it is on the vendors that are downtown Cleveland at Progressive Field and some of the venues, how difficult it's going to be, because a lot of those vendors are not going to be able to sell their products, and how devastating it is to them for their livelihoods, their careers, their families. We have the same thing here. We have over 300, close to 400 vendors that come here. About a third of those are food vendors. All of these vendors have been thrown off their track. Most of these, the festivals, the fairs they go to have been canceled, which means a huge loss of income for them. We've tried to help them. As you probably noticed when you pulled in today's gates, there's the fair food that we have going. We've had that going for about 6 weeks now. And every week, Friday through Sunday, we have a handful of vendors come in and they're able to sell fair food. We worked that out with the health commissioner to do that. It's been very successful. People have been coming in and out, and I can't tell you how appreciative the vendors are, because they have a chance to make some money. You know, when you're not going anywhere and all these venues are being canceled, we have a lot of small business people that are just barely getting by. So we feel it's very important for that reason too. Is it worth it? Yes. To help them out, to get them back here so they can start up and hopefully start getting orders and make a living. So for all those reasons, we think the fair is very important, and we should have it this year. Now I'd like to move to the commissioners, the Lorain County commissioners. As probably a lot of you are aware, they came out, I believe it was the day before yesterday. It must have been Wednesday they have their meeting, because there were news accounts of the meeting in our local newspapers yesterday that I saw for the first time. I did get a call from one reporter Wednesday night asking me what I thought of the commissioner's mandate to cancel the fair. I didn't know anything about it. It doesn't surprise me, again, because it's political. Why doesn't it surprise me? Because they don't want to have a conversation. They don't want to have a dialogue. They have no intention of talking to us. They don't invite us to their meetings. They don't give us a heads up and say, hey, we're going to talk about this today. Could you send somebody over? We'd like to have a dialogue. They don't. They don't come out here to our fairgrounds and ask to meet with us to talk about their concerns. You've got a political mayor who goes to the commissioners, who are all political, and they talk about what can we do to cancel and derail the fair. So they have this nice conversation. They come out in the newspaper and they talk about all their concerns and all of that. Never once did they come to us. And again, if you have a chance to look at those newspaper accounts that were in yesterday's papers, they are totally void, again, of any comments about what the Ohio Department of Health says or requires, what Governor DeWine is requiring in his directives, or what Dave Colville, our Lorain County Health Commissioner, is saying. They don't want to talk about that, because all of them are saying you can have a fair and you can have it safely. They don't want us to have a fair. If this isn't political, folks, I don't know what is. It's probably one of the most political jobs you can ever see, of what's being done to the fair by these folks to try to derail us this year. Obviously, we don't appreciate that. We're more professional than that. If they really wanted to have a dialogue, they would call us and start that, but they don't. And then you see a one-sided account in the newspapers, and it's like, well, this is nice. We didn't get a chance to comment. We weren't invited to the meeting. And we probably understand why, because they don't want to hear what we have to say. And as soon as we start talking about what the governor has put out, the Ohio Department of Health and Lorain County Health Department, silence, absolute silence. So I would suggest to you what they're doing is very political too. It's disappointing. I think it's unprofessional, but it's not surprising, knowing what goes on in politics all over the state and all over the counties and nationally and everything else. I don't have to tell you, you all know better than I how probably upset everybody is with politics on all levels. But when it enters into a fair and people are putting information out like that, they don't realize that it's hurtful to the kids that are preparing to see that, the 4-H kids. It's hurtful to the fair employees that are here working to prepare. It's hurtful to the community to see that. And what they're doing is they're going to essentially going to hurt our business, because they're going to scare people to stay away. And they shouldn't be doing that. They should be looking at the science. If you really want talk about what's right and what's fair. Look at the science. We hear that on the national level. We hear that on the state level. We should look at it on the county level too. Unfortunately, the science is in our favor, but they don't want to say that. Why else would there be 50 other state fairs in the state of Ohio that are having fairs this year? Ask yourself, why would they be doing it? You know, we're not just out here by ourselves saying we want to have a fair, and there's 88 other counties in the state that are saying, you know, oh no, don't do that, and their mayors and their commissioners are fighting them on it. I don't know of any other county besides Lorain where we've got a mayor, part-time mayor, in a local small town, and commissioners that say they don't want to have a fair. Just the opposite. We've heard from Medina County and other counties where they first canceled their fair, and then they decided to come back and they put a vote on to have their fair, where their commissioners and their mayor and everybody wanted them to have a fair, and they came to them, please reconsider, we want you to have a fair. So it's just amazing what we're seeing here. I'll stop there. Are there any questions about the mayor's letter or about the commissioners that I can answer for anyone? Anybody? Okay, I'll continue on then. Yes, sir.
You said part-time mayor regarding Hans Schneider a few times.
Yes, I have.
Is this your full-time job or your part-time job?
I'm a volunteer. It's not a job for me at all, sir. You're Jason Hawk from the Chronicle?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm a volunteer. I would think you would know that. All my time is volunteer. Actually, I'm taking time off work, and I'm getting took a half a vacation day to be here this morning to speak with you folks.
I'm just curious why it's important for you to point out twice that he's a part-time mayor.
Because I think that people don't understand that being a part-time mayor is a lot different than being a full-time mayor. It's less significant, if you will. I'm pointing it out for that reason, because he has less to do. It's a small job in a small town. And you've got a guy trying to make a lot of noise and making a lot of hay with this and wants the publicity, and you ask yourself why. And then he runs to the commissioners to ask for a resolution to derail us. And I know he's been to the health commissioner asking the same thing. But again, the science is not on their side. And that's why you won't see him talk about it, because every time you go back to it, it's in our favor. And I'm going to tell you why we can make this a safe fair momentarily. So if there are no questions, any other questions I can answer? You happy to answer them? Okay, I'm going to move on. One of the big things I want to talk about is there's been a lot of discussion in the media and on both state, local, and county level about, well, can you do this safely? Of utmost concern to this fair board is doing it safely. We had to wait until June. It was June 11th when the board had a special meeting. We made a decision. We were finally going to go forward because we were waiting on directives from the state, from the Ohio Department of Health, the Ohio Department of Agriculture, and from our local county representatives. We needed to have their directives that it could be done safely. We waited until then, which is a long time because we started preparing for this fair actually in September the year before. So we've been working on this fair for, 10, 11 months now, 10 months. So, to wait to say for sure we were going until mid-June is a long wait for us. We kept working, we kept preparing, we kept hearing things from Columbus that this is going to open up, they're going to tell you how to do it, and you can do it safely, and it did. And we took that advice and we moved forward with it. So we waited a long time before we made that decision. But we had, again, Mr. Dave Koval come in, who spent a good hour with us on June 11th before we voted to go forward. And he asked questions from the public. There were probably, by our counts, 75, 80 people there. Not only did the Fair Board directors have the ability to ask questions, the public had the ability to ask questions. And when he was done, everybody, I think, in that room was convinced that we could do this fair safely and you could go forward. And the board voted, and the vote was 17-3. A lot of papers have reported 16-3, but it was 17-3 in favor of going forward. And the only reason why it wasn't 18-3 was because I'm the president and I can't vote unless there's a tie. But I was surely in support of it too. I wanted to go forward also with all the other directors that wanted to go forward with this fair. So we waited a long time. We digested a lot of information, and it was based on the representations we had from them, not from our political people, not from the mayor, not from the commissioners, not this other baloney. We got it from the people that counted, that really matter, from the health people that make those decisions. And we made the decision to go forward. Now, what comes with that? A lot of responsibility, a lot of change here for the fair. Let me tell you some of the things that we're going to do here that are different that we normally do, and you'll see how hard we're working to make this a safe fair. Now, we've met with Lorain County Health Department, Dave Koval and his staff. There's a staff of about 5 or 6 we've been meeting with. To talk about the different areas of the fair and how they need to be done and be done safely. Just talk about one thing, the grandstand right behind me. What's going to be done with that? We normally can have 6,000 people sitting in our grandstand, both the grandstand and across the track. You'll see seating here. That's our normal venue. In addition, we can set up track seating for different events where there's not something going on the track. For concerts, we have standing room, we have chairs that's similar to what you're sitting on that are set up in our area, so we can increase the size of that venue. You know, about 6,000 is the max we can hold. It was suggested to us by the state of Ohio and the Lorain County Health Department, you need to cut that way down. Cut it down to about 2,500, 2,200, and we have. We've cut all of the tickets that are available for those shows down, and the reason we've done that is spatial distancing. That's a term everybody knows. To make sure we can spread out, people will have their room, and people can safely sit and watch a show, not have someone sitting on top of them that may have a cough or may have some sort of issue going on. So that is something we spend a lot of time on, is working on spacing out the grandstand, cutting down the numbers, concerned about spatial distancing, and there's going to be requests for masking for these shows also. Let's talk about our campground. We have a huge campground area. We have, I don't know, it's several hundred, probably, I won't even estimate how many hundred we have that are in our campground. They camp the whole week of fair. 4-H families that gather for the week that want to come in and spend the week here, it's packed. We always have a waiting room list. We've cut that down by about 30% this year. And we went through with the health department again on that. We looked at spacing. We looked at the appropriateness of gathering, of how you're going to get in and out, of wristbanding people that are going in and out, of limiting the number of people that are there. So those details were worked out with the health department. Before I go on any further, I just want to tell you, we've had experience already that most other fairs and even businesses in the state of Ohio haven't had in working with putting things on here, and they've been very successful. An example of 3 items would be we've had Second Harvest Food Bank distributions here. We've had 3. We've had thousands of people come through our gates. We've had the assistance of the Sheriff's Department, the Health Department on setting up, on routing them. They've gone off extremely well. They've been all well received. We've had our food fair that's gone on for 6 weeks, where we have people driving through, ordering food and driving out. That's gone extremely well. Most of the communities have all decided they're going to stay inside rather than do anything, so we couldn't have fireworks here in Wellington or our community this year. So what did we decide? The Fair Board took it on. We said, we think we can do this and we can do it safe. So we went to the health department, we went to the fire chief, we went to the sheriff, all the people that have to sign off and approve fireworks shows, and they all said, yes, you can do it. And they gave us a plan on how to do it. We put the plan together, and we had an extremely successful weekend. Normally, the police that were working it for traffic told us we get about 800 cars that come through. We had almost 2,000 that showed up for our show. 2,000. We're figuring 4 or 5 people a car. Probably had 8,000 to 10,000 people here. It went off very well received. So my point in bringing that up is we've done a lot of things already where we've coordinated with the health department, local police, fire department, planned things, and they've gone very well. And we think if you plan and you're safe, those are additional reasons why we can do it. Where other people have just sat home and said we can't do it, well, we've said, well, we think we can do it if we do it safely. Let's get their input, and we've done it. Let's talk about a couple other things. Stuff like shuttles, where people would ride and get on and off. We give them right out to our parking lots. We're not going to run those this year. There'd have to be a lot of cleaning and sanitizing after everybody rides on those. Too difficult, so we're not going to run our shuttles. Senior Day. As you're all aware, a lot of the folks that are seniors seem to be at a higher risk for coronavirus, and getting very sick for it. So we've canceled our Senior Day in the sense that it's not a free day. We're still inviting seniors to come, but we have a huge turnout when it's a free day. We've said, unfortunately, we're doing that, but we're only doing that for your protection. So they're still able to come, but we're looking at that. As far as pedestrian traffic around the fair, the markings aren't up, but you'll see when you come to the fair, if you come to the fair, that there'll be markings on the ground. A lot of similar things that you would see if you would go to a grocery store, you'd go to a store like Walmart. Spatial distancing, tape for 6 feet apart, tape for lines. We're going to have different lines to try to keep traffic moving, so we don't have people congregating and standing in certain areas. Again, this is all in compliance with the directives from the Department of Health and from the Lorain County Health Department. The food vendors. Everybody except the person over the grill is going to be masked and gloved. So they're queued and they're ready to go. They're excited to be here, and they will follow any instructions the health department puts down. Stuff like condiments, you would think, well, what about condiments? You shouldn't have to worry about that. There won't be any kind of community condiment things put out, like a big salt shaker you might shake on your fries, or you go up and you get some French fries and you want to put ketchup on. There's a community, pump where you pump your ketchup on. mustard, relish, those kinds of things. You won't see those. What you're going to see is the vendors, so we don't have to worry about people touching things and then other people coming up and touching them and possibly passing something on. The vendors will put the condiments on the food before it comes out to you. It'll be wrapped that way. Or if they're going to give you something to put the condiments on yourself, they're going to be in packages, sealed packets. Or a lot of them have these little solo cups with a lid. They can put the condiment or the item in there. But that's how those things will be done. So we're planning from that end to make sure we can make things as safe as possible, and those are the best standards that the state of Ohio and the county fair are recommending, or the county health department are recommending to us. As far as wiping things down, community areas like restrooms, picnic tables, chairs, benches, and all of that, we have people that will be going around checking those things, people that will be wiping them off, cleaning them, whether it's with a sanitizer or soap and water. Soap and water, we're told, is just as effective as the hand sanitizer as long as you wash it down, you wipe it off. So we're going to be queuing on those things in watching the restrooms. The restrooms, particularly the men's restroom, a lot of the johns and the urinals, there's going to be spatial distancing, so some of them are going to be shut down, so there's room between each one, so someone's not on top of each other. We've had them go through our restrooms, the health department. They've checked our sinks. They're very good to us, the health department. They provide hand sanitizer all over the fair. You'll see that on every building you go into. You're going to see hand sanitizer. Please wash your hands. Please keep your hands clean. That signage will be everywhere. You'll see it in the restrooms. You're going to see a media blitz before the fair of all the things that we're going to be doing. You're going to see it on fences and all of those things, but we're going to be reminding people. The signage has already been designed and will be put up at the appropriate time for all those types of things. We'll have signage with regard to, if you're sick, the standard things. If you're sick, you've got a cough, you're ill, you're running a temperature, don't come in. If you've been around someone that's been exposed and confirmed COVID-19, don't come in, go home. We're going to send you home. But we're going to have a very good PR program that's going to lay all those things out for you. As far as some of the other areas, as far as the barns and that, you'll see arrows that are going to have one-way traffic coming in one way, going out another. So you circle around so that people, if an aisle's only 8 feet wide and you got traffic going both ways, we're going to steer that traffic one way, going one way and come out the other, so that people have plenty of distance to have their 6-foot spatial distancing. All the vendors, the people that, not food now, these are people that have exhibits, masks are going to be required. They will be spatially distanced too. Even though they're going to be in their booths, they all know they have to be 6 feet apart. I mean, there isn't anybody, I don't think, in the United States that knows what that rule is now. And we'll make sure that we comply with that. With regard to education, we're going to educate our 4-H kids. That's already started in all the clubs. We've talked about that. We've talked about different rules. Those things will all be posted. It'll be well explained, and there'll be meetings on all those different types of things. So. Are there any issues with regard to, or questions with regard to the different things we're doing? I've just touched on probably about 80% of them. I'm sure I probably missed some, but there are a lot of things, as you can see, we're doing to make this safe, and that's why the health directors keep saying, well, if you follow the standards and the protocol, you can do this safely. And that's our intention. Yes, ma'am.
With regard to the campgrounds, you
Yes,
said
ma'am.
that you've reduced the capacity there. What was the original capacity? What have you reduced it to? And you said it's usually booked up. What are the reservations looking like now?
Well, it's filled already. We've cut it back from 100% to about 60%. I don't want to mistake, but it's right about in that general range. We've cut it back that much. That's been based on walkthroughs and recommendations from the health department. Unfortunately, everybody that normally comes is not going to get in. We feel bad about that, but we've made it known to them that it's just impossible. We have to follow the restrictions, and we will. So there's been multiple walkthroughs, and there's been a lot of work, a plan designed to take care of that. But it's about 60% of what 100% would normally be is what the capacity is going to be this year. And that's because we're spreading things out, pulling things apart.
And it's booked up already?
Yes, ma'am, it's full. Yep. Yeah, unfortunately, there'll be a lot of people that normally come that won't be able to this year because of that. Yes, sir.
As of right now, there's a statewide mask mandate, even outdoors, for situations where social distancing of 6 feet isn't necessarily
Right.
doable.
Right.
Will there be mask checks at the gates? Will people without masks be allowed in?
No, there will be. As long as the current rules are in place, they will be checked when they come in. If they don't have one, we're going to ask them to get one and come back. Whatever order it is, the orders have been moving a little bit on us, as you all know. They seem to move one way, they come back the other. They're restrictive and they're less restrictive, depending on the zones and you know, all the statistics and those kinds of things. But the way it stands now, the answer to your question is yes, they will be required when they come in to have a mask.
Will you provide any masks?
We've been discussing that. We will provide masks for people like our parking lot attendants, our ticket takers that take tickets and exchange money. They'll be masked and they'll have gloves, so they can have gloves to keep their hands clean. We have them for our employees here. We will provide the PPE for all those folks. We've been talking about whether we'll provide them for the public or not. At this point, we haven't made that decision to do that. We think that most people have masks already. No matter where you go, everyone here knows you have your mask, whether you jump out of your car and run into the store, or you go to the mall or wherever you might go. Everybody has a mask today, so they will be required. Yes, sir.
There's also been talk about having some employees walking the fairgrounds asking people to be mindful of those sorts of things.
Yes, sir. That will happen. We've been planning that. That's one of the areas that I've been working on with the Midway and Concession Department. And we have a couple areas that are particularly heavy, and sometimes, well, we know they get congested because they're food areas. We know from years past, you know, where the heavy traffic is and where those areas are. So we will have people going around that'll be watching, that'll be looking, that'll be politely suggesting to them if they're too close or there's people start to bunch up, you know, would you folks please separate out, or would you move to another area where it's not congested? So there will be people going around watching that and suggesting that. It's definitely our intention to do that. You know, we obviously we can't be in every nook and cranny of the fairgrounds every moment, but we will make every effort to do that. And again, that's going to be publicized. So we'll be doing that. We'll have people here that will be doing that for the directors. The directors will be watching that. It's not our sheriff's deputies' responsibility to do that, but I'm sure when they're walking around too, if they see someone that's a little too close, they might say, you know, spread out a little bit. You know, it's not their responsibility, but our sheriffs have been great to us, and it's not their duty, but I'm sure if there's an issue too, they'll let us know, and we can make sure we get it taken care of. So we'll have the people in place to do that. You know, unfortunately, we know every move we make, there's people out there that don't want us to have a fair, and we fully expect that the minute they see something they don't like, it's going to be screenshotted and sent to someone. There's going to be issues made of it, but I'll tell you right now, we're going to make every effort to not let that happen, and we are preparing to follow all the protocol that we put into place. Any other questions on that? Okay. With regard to, again, the safety, we'll have our normal safety forces here. The Sheriff's Department will be here. They're here 24/7 for about an 8 to 9 day period throughout the fair. So we have our security for that. With regard to, we have other security that just walk around in our parking areas and that. They'll obviously be working here. They'll be masked and be instructed on how to perform their duties. One thing I didn't mention to you folks is that particularly in our parking area and our ticket areas, we're going to have the questionnaire that you've all probably heard of. A questionnaire to ask about how you're feeling that day. We're not going to be taking temperatures, but we're going to have the questionnaire. Have you been sick? Are you sick today? Do you have a temperature? Did anybody at home, are they sick? Are you living with anybody, or have you been in contact with anybody that's tested COVID positive today? So we'll keep track of that. We'll ask those questions when they come in and start their shift. So we'll have a record of that, and we will do that every day. And we'll want to make sure that every day those are collected, and there'll be different times of day when those are done, because we have shift changes. We have people that might work, they'll start at 8 in the morning, they might work till 2 in the afternoon, and then the two crowd will come in and work till 10 o'clock. So we'll have to monitor that, and we'll be updating that as we go. But all of our supervisors in those areas will be given those things to make sure they're done, and the directors will be watching to make sure we get that data and we can keep track of it. Because the goal again is to be safe and do things correctly. Any other questions on the PPE and the stuff that we're doing that other places either aren't doing, or we think could be done that are extra? Anybody else? Okay. There are several other items that I thought you might ask about, but you haven't, so I'll open it up for questions, and if there are none, we'll wrap it up. Any other questions that I might answer for the group today? Okay, there appear to be none. I thank you all for coming. Yes, ma'am.
What about the issue of the Confederate flag? That
Okay.
So far we know that vendors who usually sell the Confederate flag are not going to be present,
Right.
the one vendor, but you've chosen not to ban the Confederate flag.
That's correct.
Could you talk about that?
Well, you know, the resolution kind of took care of itself when Russ Bissett said he couldn't be here this year. He, like so many other vendors, and you probably have heard his story, is all these fairs and carnivals and festivals they go to have been pulled off from underneath them. So for them to gear up to come to our fair and buy inventory, pay for their space. Russ is a guy that doesn't have a camper, that he stays at a hotel, he has to buy food. In addition to the space, he pays for a tent. It's a large tent. So when you start just looking at the expenses of the spot in the tent, you're up at $1,500 right there. You haven't sold one thing yet. He's got to pay for a hotel and food. Depending on where he stays, you know what the bill's going to be. It could be higher, it could be low, probably low. But it's a huge expense for him to come here and then to get out on the circuit and drive and go from one place to the next. So for that reason alone, he won't be here, okay? With regard to the Confederate flag, I have spoke on this issue many times, and you know the resistance we've had, but I would suggest to you that the constitutionally correct thing to do is not to ban the sale of the flag. Because if you do that, you're going to be violating what we believe is a free speech issue. Free speech is not only verbal, it's symbolic, which includes flags, t-shirts, memorabilia, all kinds of stuff. And we have had the Civil War memorabilia here for 40 years. Didn't have a problem until one politician, Matt Lundy, one of the commissioners who wants to cancel the fair, came and made a complaint about 4 or 5 years ago. And he typically didn't come to our fair, and there was one vendor that had a hanging, it was Russ, made an issue of it. So, and then Janine Donaldson jumped on board, and these other various coalitions of a handful of people jumped on board and started making an issue of it. You know, we dug in because if you look at the law, the United States Supreme Court, the federal courts, the state courts of Ohio, all the jurisdictions have said, no, you can't do that. You can't start banning free speech. If we do, none of you folks would be here today. Because the press, your bread and butter is the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights, free speech. Without that, you guys all go home. Someone tells you you can't film things, you can't report things, you can't have a newspaper, you guys are done. Very critical to the foundation of our country that we stand on that, and we will stand on that. Now, whether there's a vendor here selling that or not, that might be another thing. You know, and right now we have no one here this year. What will happen in the future? I don't know. There's not a long list of people. We have one person left who's been with us for 40 years, or 30 years. We've been doing it for 40 years. So as far as that goes, we don't buy it, we don't sell it, we don't fly it. We fly the American flag, as you can see, and we always have, and always will. There are a lot of people that are saying that, well, you shouldn't do this because it's distasteful, or I'm offended, and that, and the other thing. And I understand how people might be offended, and people get offended to a lot of things. But you shouldn't be offended and then infringe on someone else's right to free speech. I get offended when I see somebody burn the flag in protest. Nothing I can do about it. It's free speech. It's protected. The United States Supreme Court has said that. I get offended when I see protesters that think they're protesting downtown Cleveland and they start breaking windows and setting stuff on fire and threatening people and then looting. That's not protesting. That's not protected speech. That's not protected by any of the constitutional amendments. Looting and rioting and threatening to beat people up. No. The protest part of it is. You absolutely have the right to protest, but peacefully, not destroy everybody's property. I get upset when I see politicians say, well, that's just people being people, justifying violence all over the United States. You know, what's happening to our country? I don't know. I think at some point in time, if we lose our Constitution, which has made this the greatest country in the United States, and why everybody in the world wants to come here, they do, all over. They want to come be a citizen. They want to come here and live in this country where you have all these freedoms, and you have the ability to make a living, and raise your kids, and do as much or as little as you want. If we do away with that, your Constitution, your First Amendment rights, I think our country is in serious trouble, ma'am.
So if somebody were to walk in wearing a Confederate flag T-shirt,
they could.
You're not going to stop anybody from
No, we're not.
displaying it in any way.
No, we're not. So if someone's wearing a T-shirt, you want to walk in with it, they're entitled to. Just like we can't stop someone that comes in if they have a Cleveland Chief Wahoo shirt on. You know, people find that offensive now, I guess. I still have a sweatshirt with Chief Wahoo on at home. I don't find it offensive, and I wear it around, but some people might. You know, that's one thing Russ sold too, was Chief Wahoo T-shirts. You know, people might find that offensive. Someone comes walking in with, oh, we're not going to send them home. Someone comes in with a gay pride shirt on, we're not going to send them home. Someone comes in with a Jesus verse on their shirt, we're not going to send them home. But I'll tell you right now, there are a lot of people that find each one of those things offensive. And we think if we start doing that, you start censoring that, you start pulling back on people's right to freedom of speech, you've got a serious problem. And just look what happened in the state of Ohio, the House of Representatives. They had a couple bills go before them, will you ban the Confederate flag at all fairs? No, they shot out immediately. Why? Because they're bound by the Constitution too. You know, why does the Supreme Court of the United States rule the way they do? Because they're bound by the Constitution. So we feel we're doing what is constitutionally correct. And it's such a little piece of our fair because folks like you, the media, will come in often, and they'll come in and they'll say, after they've been here for a couple hours, where's the Confederate guys at? I can't find them. We hear that all the time. And if you don't know where to go to see where Russ is at, who's tucked back in alongside one of the buildings, you'll walk right by him. You know, so it's that innocuous, but it's a huge deal to a few people that don't come to our fairs, but know that it's down here in a very limited fashion because it offends them. So I kind of rambled a lot, but that's why we won't back off of the do a ban. It's not saying we support it. We could care less about the flag, Confederate flag. But it's the whole item. When you start, where do you stop? Any other questions? Okay, looks like that's it. If anybody wants a copy of those letters, I have a copy of Schneider's letter they put on Facebook, and then a copy of the letter that he actually gave to the board. If anybody wants one in the chair there, you're free to help yourself if you want a copy of those. You probably don't need them. You know what he said already anyhow. All I can do is say thank you very much for coming out today. We appreciate you being here. Hopefully we're going to have a fair. You know, we're subject to everything else, the governor's rules and the health department rules, and this coronavirus thing has just been so unpredictable, as you all know. So, you know, we will follow those in the healthcare and medical department areas, their recommendations, and we'll base all our decisions on that. So, thanks again, and if you're able to, we'd invite you back. Thank you. Does anybody want one of those? If you don't, I'll pick them up. Probably not.